What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro v Pro. Exciting week coming up. Valero Texas Open. It's where we hit the Corey Connors Monday qualifier outright a few years ago. And we got a lot of Masters preview to get through. So I don't know, where do you want to start here, Justin?
There's so many places to start. Let's start by golf is hard, as I had got to play another golf tournament the last 2 days. And that's why if I look like if I look like a tomato, I've gotten beat by 30-mile-an-hour winds the last 2 days here in North Texas. So, it's fun. Obviously, we're looking forward to next week. I think, that's obviously everybody's circle on the calendar. So, I like the fact that we played real golf last week again. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a 25 under winner, and then we're going to go to another course that, we've seen play pretty hard and we may get some wind. Man, I'm just kind of looking forward to continue to build. I know that you did really well again on Showdown this week, and we're just kind of building things. I was talking to a friend of mine about this. I think that we're really close to doing some really special stuff. We've been right around it all week, and whether it's or all year, and whether it's you or me, and then hitting a couple of outrights, and then Josh too. So. Yeah, it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward just to the general conversation of last week, this week, and next week.
And hopefully we can turn that DraftKings success into that one-and-done chase, because we still, even after last week, are in the top 200 in the Pat Mayo one-and-done. Let's see if we can make a big move in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, the Masters week is going to matter a little bit more in the one-and-done contest than this week, but one of the cool things, you mentioned the fact that you've been playing this morning, you have experience on this golf course here that's going to be played at the Valero. Let me give you the course fit model for this week, and I'm curious how your experience on the course and what you've learned from playing this golf course, how that compares to what the data is telling us. And so what we have here at the Valero, increase on driving distance, 16% up, slight decrease on both driving accuracy and approach play, not like some crazy dramatic de-emphasis. Both still very much matter, but a huge increase on around the green play, 89% boost, and then also a small but meaningful boost on putting. The reason the around the green signal is so incredibly interesting is because we get the exact same thing next week at Augusta, where that around the green emphasis is a 100% boost on the predictive value of strokes gained around the green. Pretty obvious, right? Like, Hideki Matsuyama pretty much won a green jacket because he's brilliant around the greens, both creative and just so damn good. So it's cool that we have such a preview for the Masters here at the Valero that is challenging players in a similar way. So could you kind of pick up on that around the green signal when you played it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of the similarities here are the runoff areas. So you get into these tight lies where they're around the green stuff becomes so much more difficult to where, the guys that are really good kind of rise to the top. Mm-hmm. Immediately thinking of just guys that just chip the ball very, very solid, no matter what their lie looks like. And also it makes sense because generally speaking, I haven't played this place many times where it wasn't blowing 20 miles an hour. Yeah. It's just kind of the way it works. You look at the guys that have won here in the past, they either absolutely just out ball struck everybody, which you can do at the Masters, mm-hmm. or they just chipped and putted it better than everybody, which you can do at the Masters. Yeah. So you kind of have the two things that kind of go together.
One of the things that I noticed when watching the practice round at Augusta in the last 2 years was that there are so many chip shots and pitch shots around the green. I would even say more pitch shots than chip shots, just a little bit lengthier, where there's so much undulation in the green, so much elevation change, pins on plateaus, things of that nature, where you have to be so precise, not just your overall distance, but your carry distance on the pitch shots, where like if you land it 1 yard too far, you're landing up on the flat, and it's going to go way past the hole. And if you land it 1 yard too short, now you're hitting into the face, and it's going to roll all the way back to your feet and things of that nature. Do you see the same sort of thing here at the Valero?
Yeah, very much so. Undulated greens, controlling spin, whether that be spinning it more or less, kind of both. But I also love the comparison that most people probably think that's the same thing, and that's a pitch shot and a chip shot. Mm-hmm. And they're so different. And you have to at Valero, you have to pitch it really good. There's not much chipping, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I think this is how I would categorize the difference. I'm curious if you would say it the same way. A chip shot, you just have to get the ball rolling, whereas a pitch shot, you have to send it in the air a certain amount and then control what it's going to do once it lands, which you do through spin. So it's a more difficult shot because you have to control the launch angle, you have to control how hard you're hitting it, and you have to control the spin. That combination of the three things, number one, you have to make perfect contact to do all of that correctly. But then, you also just it's a judgment call, right? You have to pick the correct spot and then execute to that spot.
Yeah, and pick the correct shot, not just spot, but the shot, the trajectory, the spin you're trying to execute. And the common misconception is, if you're pitching it, you're using a 60, and if you're chipping it, you're using a pitching wedge. That's not necessarily true. Albeit, if you're pitching it, you're probably not using a pitching wedge. Oddly enough, you're using a 60 or a sand wedge. It's just two totally different shots, and I think that's where this translates a lot. I think it's a little bit different just because of the grass types they're probably going to be called the same, but they're not going to be reacting the same, if that makes sense. Yeah. And the other thing that Augusta does that I hit on last year when we talked about this is Augusta mows every fairway from the green back. So therefore, you are pitching into the grain. Grain does not go with sun or any of that nonsense. It's one of two things. It's water or mowing. That's which way the grass lays. So you have to execute really, really good pitch shots. There's not much forgiveness. So I'll be interested to see who looks the best around the greens, but I also am going to be kind of interested of the guys in contention. If it blows a lot this week, it's going to be difficult. And how does that carry over into the Masters and the mental beating of the grind?
Mm-hmm. For those who aren't as familiar with grain and why it matters so much when we talk about chipping, you can think about like the way that the grass lays. Here, I'll use a pen. So if the grass is laying down grain like this, and you try and chip the ball, and your club comes down and hits the grass, it's just going to glide across, right? There's going to be very little resistance, it just glides. If the grain is going this way and you come down and you hit a little bit behind the ball, guess what? The grass is just going to stop your wedge. That's when you hit that one that's like, I meant to hit it 30 yards and it went 2 feet and I look like a moron. It's because you're chipping into the grain and you just stuck the leading edge right into the ground. Yeah,
obviously, there's guys that just do it better than others. Yeah. So it'll be fun. Kind of leads me into like what we were talking about earlier of, do you like the Scotty Scheffler approach of let's play Houston and then take this week off and then play next week? Or do you like the pre, if you were playing in the Masters, would you be playing this week as well?
I'm not sure. I think, number one, I would say I don't think there is a right answer. I think it fully depends on the player. It fully depends on, like, for one thing, how much do you value practice rounds on the actual location? Because if you're not playing this week, maybe you go to Augusta early, and that's going to help with some guys. Some people, I think my inclination is I don't care so much about how much the week prior is going to play similarly. I want to be in competition. So I would probably play this week just because I want the competition, not necessarily for the similarity of the golf course. But it probably just depends on the player.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I know when I was playing, I tend to play my best my third week in. That was just kind of my sweet spot of every time that I had a chance to win, it just seemed like it was always my third week in. That being said, they live a different lifestyle than we did. So it's not like the travel, drive around. So I would actually be more inclined to have played 2 weeks and then this week off and then play the Masters, that kind of schedule. But I think a lot too has to depend on how you're playing, right? I mean, there has to be some factor of You're probably not going to get much wind in Augusta. You're going to get a ton of wind here. Anybody that knows going from playing in 30-mile-an-hour winds every day, your golf swing just changes, especially after doing it 4 or 5 days in a row. Yep. So I don't know. It's an interesting concept. I know Scotty kind of had this plan of playing the way he did, and then taking this week off. You don't really see. I mean, the names this week. I think you have the best point. I don't know the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk before we get into the Valero and some picks there and some DFS strategy and thoughts there. Let's talk about the Masters a little bit. We ran the projections already. Now we're going to update the projections, of course, especially for guys who play this week, and their performance this week is going to affect their projection next week. But right now, can you guess who we have as the top 5 in just expected strokes gained at Augusta? So that's not going to perfectly translate to our projected win equity or made cut equity, all that stuff. Just who projects to gain the most strokes at Augusta National?
Well, is there any stipulations? Are we including Scotty Scheffler in this conversation, or just like,
we are?
Are we just going to call him? I mean, he's going to be number 1. Are we just going to call? Are we? If we want it, we can include him if you want, and just to say, hey, he's clear cut.
Yeah, in fact, let's toss him out because the next name on the list is an interesting one. So top 5 other than Scotty, who's in his own tier at the top.
Yeah. So the argument here is going to be: are we the live guys? Are we getting accurate numbers, and are those all fitting? I hope that Rahm is not on the list and his ownership gets driven way, way down because of everybody's so scared of playing him coming in here. I don't know if that's going to happen, but like in a dream world, right? If we can get Rahm under 15%, because everybody's done so much else, I like that. But I would say just pure numbers, like Matsuyama has to be way up there just because of the around the green stuff, in my opinion.
He is just outside. He's number 7 on the list. And yeah, it's because his around the green is phenomenal. His approach play has also been fantastic this season. Kind of a resurgence in his career.
And then I'm just going to go by form, right? As Wyndham Clark has to be in the conversation because his form's been good.
He's right after Hideki.
So the guys that like personally, if I just were thought, like Oberg has to be there as far as everything goes. He's in the conversation up there.
He is 4th. And actually he's 3rd if we're not including Scotty in this.
And then Schauffele has to be in the conversation.
He's 2nd only to Scotty.
And then, I mean, I don't know how Rory's not in there, but his form has a Schauffele. Yeah, okay. So we've got the same usual suspects.
So there's one name we haven't mentioned yet. It's a bit of a surprise, but it's not necessarily going to be a surprise to people who have watched our show all season because we talk about this guy every single time he sees
him.
No, not Siwoo. I like that again. No, Sahith Theegala.
Okay.
Theegala is right after Oberg, right before Cam Smith, Hideki Matsuyama, Wyndham Clark. So very interesting, I think, top 5, top 10 here where we go Scotty, Schauffele, Rory.
Siwoo has to be in this conversation somewhere. Like,
where is Siwoo? Siwoo's 24th, 23rd. He's 23rd, 22nd if you're not including Scotty. Tee to green, he's phenomenal. The problem is we have him losing almost 0.3 of a stroke per round on the greens, which is just really, really hard to make up. Now,
did you see any? Did you like any of the improvement you saw last week? Of like, so I know maybe his numbers were not so much better, but if you watched any, it looked better to the eye.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is if you notice in the last few weeks, he's had a lot of variation in his strokes gained putting that he hadn't had previously. So we talk a bunch about when we're talking about win equity, it's a combination of how well does this player project and how volatile is this player, because that volatility more volatility can actually help you gain access to a higher ceiling. So while Siwoo's expected strokes gain number hasn't improved a ton over the last few weeks, his volatility has increased. So his win equity has really increased. So in that regard, I do really like Siwoo. In fact, he's one of 3 futures, I should say, that I placed this morning. Siwoo Kim was one of them. The other two are Lucas Glover and Taylor Moore. So we can talk about those guys in a bit, but I want to stay at the top here for a second. Do you think Thigala belongs as high as we have him in the projections now?
He's proven that he does. I don't know that there's much question that we, anybody that watches the show, we're huge on upside, and his upside is very much there. I don't necessarily love the way he putts for Augusta, just the way that it looks to me. But that being said, if the numbers are the numbers, right? I worry about a little bit of the imagination side of things, and is it wrong for me to think, like, when you think of Thigala, we kind of lump a lot of these guys into that same category, like Finau and these guys with this huge upside that just don't seem to, I don't know, when it comes into certain situations where it's a little bit different, they just kind of struggle.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where I put him.
I think it's a good point where Thigala kind of separates from that category for me is the fact that he is now good in every single aspect of golf. He previously had this big hole with driving accuracy. Man, he's been one of the more accurate players in the world off the tee lately. In terms of his putting, we have him as the third best putter in the field behind Cameron Smith, who's kind of in a tier of his own, and then Matt Fitzpatrick, Thigala being third. To your point, though, if there's something about his putting style, it's a shorter, jabbier stroke that maybe isn't going to function quite as well on the incredibly fast, undulating Augusta greens, then maybe he wouldn't be your third highest projected putter on the golf course, in which case maybe you do think he's slightly overrated. I think he's fairly rated. I really think he has become this good. And I think part of that, too, is there's sort of been a fall off of, let's say, the 5th to 10th best player in comparison to the absolute best player in the world, compared to what we saw like a year ago, where there were just, it seems so many guys were perfectly in form. And now we've got Rory struggling a little bit. We've got Jon Rahm, who, since his win at the Masters, he finished T2 at the Open Championship. Other than that, he doesn't really have a single finish on tour or on live that screams that he's in form. So he's 10th in our expected strokes gained projection for the Masters. Now, we are going to go through this next week and really try to manually adjust some of these live guys for their current form and what we should expect from them. But that's in large part just going to be a guessing game because we don't know, how focused are these guys for those events? How much do they care about their finishes there? What is their prep level for those events compared to how they're preparing for the Masters? A lot of that's going to be guessing, but it's hard to put Rahm where he used to be, which would be a very clear number 2 behind Scotty.
It's funny you say that because and this is maybe a misconception and maybe a big donation by me, but I'm going to have I think I'll have to go back and look what I played it at 7.5 or 8-1 on Rahm this week to win in the live event. And I bet more on it, if you wanted to go by unit size, more than I have on any ever outright, because I think he's going to rein it in and he's preparing for next week harder than maybe he has for all of those overseas events, which
is 100% possible. And the other thing is, if you remember last year, I think the week prior to Augusta, Koepka won, and consequently his DraftKings ownership at the Masters was really high. Dude, if Rahm wins this week on live, he's going to be massively owned. But then we'd also get this really, really interesting decision at the top of, do you pay all the way up for Scotty, or do you pay for the now seemingly very underpriced Jon Rahm, or do you somehow try to fit both? So that could be a really, really fun wrinkle if he kind of regains his form this week.
And then let's hope Cam Smith finishes 30th so we can get him with no ownership and just fit right in, right? So there's definitely – and then, there's all the other side of it. Do you value what Neiman's done? Is he really that good? Is he going to come play well? I don't know. It's a pretty interesting storyline. And I just – like I said, I think Rahm is kind of what you said. He's going to prepare for the big events. Mm-hmm. We also thought DJ would do that, and he doesn't seem to give a shit. So –
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you get 300 million. What are you gonna do? Like you can't spend it all.
Yeah.
Like what do you really like? You're literally out there for your own competitive drive at this point.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned Cam Smith there because, man, when you talk about a combination of elite iron play and elite short game, not many names come to the forefront more than Cam Smith, which, by the way, is also why I placed the 300-1 outright or future on Lucas Glover, because that's all he's done this season. It's just iron play, and a dramatically improved short game from him as well. Just need the putter to cooperate once, but when you go to a golf course like Augusta, where the greens are just so different than everywhere else you've played, I think that's part of why the putting signal isn't quite as strong at Augusta as it is this week, for example.
Yeah, I love when you get on guys like Lucas Glover in a spot like this because the putting is so different. This isn't – you don't have many 15-foot right edge putts. Like you just don't. Yeah. And those are generally where your best putters do the best. Your average putters are better at like, let's just hit it out here and get the speed right, and it's got a chance to go in. It kind of equals the field out. Yeah. So, and we've all like the other thing about Lucas Glover, he's been around so long. He's not afraid. He's going to just keep doing what he's doing. The thing about Cam Smith is he has the ability into the green chipping. The chip that he hit to win the Players might be the single best golf shot I've ever seen. Like situation, grainy lie, what he did, the shot he hit. Like I would say your average household 2 handicap at your club would have hit that 1 foot in front of him. Like, I mean, just incredible. So I think Cam Smith is young enough that he'll still try to go play really well. I think he's probably preparing for Augusta like Rahm. The wild cards are going to be your DJ and your Koepka and your guys that are uber talented. And how are they handling it all?
Yeah, I want to ask you, before we move on to the Valero, what do you think of the Taylor Moore outright? And I'll give you real quick. The reason why I like it so much is, number one, this past week at the Houston Open was the second time in the last 3 events of his where the driver has really bounced back. And it's been more like what we saw last year leading into the Valspar when we bet him and won that outright than what it's been ever since, like especially the tail end of last season in the heart of the summer and late August. The driver was bad. And so we're starting to see the driver come back into form. The approach play has spiked like crazy and had bad weeks. So it's like all of his volatility has basically come from the approach play. Totally fine with that. Around the green, he has been rock solid and getting better and better each week. He just gained over a stroke per round around the green at the Houston Open. And finally, last year, the putter was so incredibly dependable. It was just like every single 5-foot putt, 6-foot putt, you weren't even sweating it. You knew it was going in the middle. He just had his best putting week of the season at the Houston Open. Doesn't mean a ton, but it does mean that, maybe he's getting back into a rhythm there. So just basically every facet of his game, I think, is improving or exactly where we want it to be heading into Augusta. And he was, I think, 250-1 was the each way that I got for him.
So I think that my best comparison would be if Brian Harman can win the British Open, Taylor Moore can win the Masters.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I mean, I think it's kind of a similar idea, similar players, similar upside if they get going. Harman obviously has gotten a lot better even recently. Maybe even, I don't know if it's just from that Open victory has freed him up or whatever it is, but I think he's continued to improve. I see Taylor Moore on that same trajectory, and therefore I can get behind Taylor Moore winning in Augusta because I just think that's such a – if Brian Harman can win in the situation he won the way he did, I would say Taylor Moore could do the same thing.
It's such a perfect segue because for the Valero this week, Brian Harman is my only outright so far, 35-1 each way over on Bet365. We have him 4th in expected strokes gained. He's also one of the most volatile players event to event in this field. 5.9% chance to win, 3rd best in this field. 35-1 is an absolute gift. I think he should be 20-1 at best.
Yeah, we talked a little bit. This is one of the few. I think that I can get behind Harmon and Henley both this week. Those are my two. And once again, Henley's a pretty good comparison to Taylor Moore as well. Like they're kind of Henley's a little bit more known for his putter, right? I think Taylor Moore probably drives it a little bit better, but similar idea. Yeah, Henley, Harmon this week. Once again, how motivated is Rory? How motivated is Hideki? Where do you stand on those guys? And I really like Ben on this week. The problem is he's super chalky and everybody's talking about him. It makes a lot of sense for him to play really well. I'd be interested just in your numbers last week. The two guys that I see that are actually there's three, Batia, Rye, and Davis Thompson all seem to be finding form that could fit here, albeit Rise is not going to be around the green much, but when you hit it as good as he's hit it lately, you really don't have to be that good around the green.
Yeah. So let's start with Thompson there. Thompson, by the way, shout out to Davis Thompson, was part of my showdown takedown, so thank you for all those. Oh, we should mention, I can't believe we've gotten this far into the show and we haven't mentioned yet. The coolest thing about my Sunday in Showdown was I won 4 tickets to the $2,222 contest for the Masters. So as if we needed any more reason to be excited for the Masters, that's going to be a blast. Maybe we'll even we could do something where we build one of the 4 lineups together here on the show, something like that. Maybe we do a special Wednesday edition or something. Just brainstorming right now, but that makes next week all the more exciting. So shout out to Davis Thompson for that is what I'm getting at. The cool thing about Thompson from a statistical perspective, he's definitely the cheapest player in this field who's projected positively in all 5 strokes gained categories: distance, accuracy off the tee, iron play, short game, and putting. Positive in all 5. To me, that gives him a floor that we almost can't quite grasp from the simulations itself. So maybe we're a little bit low on his made cut odds. For example, we have him at 64%, which is already easily the best in that price range. But yeah, he's I think a really strong play again this week. I like a lot of what I'm seeing from his game.
Yeah, and I think that when you once again, if you can drive it like he has the ability to drive it, I just think we always talk about just how big of an advantage it is. But he he stripe show Saturday and Sunday and didn't maybe get as much out of the way he hit it. I don't know how much you got to watch and how he played, but I was surprised. I feel like it was almost a good thing because we got him at a better price this week.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The biggest issue that I have with Batia here is that he does struggle with his short game at times. Now, to your point, when around the green shines like this, it's basically telling us that there are going to be a lot of situations where most players in the field are challenged to get up and down to save par. Of course, there are also times where they're going to be challenged to get up and down to make a birdie on par 5 or something like that. But a lot of this is saying it's going to be very difficult for players to separate so much through ball striking. They're still going to have to come through when they're challenged around the green. In those situations, it is possible that a player can just say, nope, I am going to separate with my ball striking. I am going to just beat the field by hitting that many more greens, giving myself that many more birdie looks. Something Victor Hovland has done a bunch in the past.
Corey Connors did it here.
Connors has done it here, yeah. Zalatoris has done it plenty of times. Morikawa has done it plenty of times. I'm not sure I'd put Batia in that class just yet of ball striking, but maybe this is the week that he tells us that he should be in that category. So from a ceiling perspective, I think that's definitely there.
And then Aaron Rye's the only other one that and he's kind of the same way. Like he is just so good tee to green right now that you think if you can get him to pop this week, another one. I'm looking for obviously the highly volatile players like we talk about, and I think that he fits right in that bill as well for a place like this where he can go out there and out ball strike everybody and hit it so good the way he's been playing that it doesn't matter. Let's
talk a little bit about DFS. What is your read at the top of the board, how likely are you to play Rory, or is it just going to be dependent on ownership? And if that's the case, how low does he have to get before you start saying, not only do I think I'm going to play him, but he becomes a priority?
So I'm probably going to just stay away no matter what. And I don't think there's an ownership. I don't think there's anything that – I don't think that he cares to be there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't like – if I was going to play anybody up top, it'd be Matsuyama, because just his personality, if he's got a – if he's playing good, he's going to go try to win. He's not so focused on next week. Obviously, he's already got a green jacket, but also, that just the way that he, I think, views the game is just a little bit different. And maybe it's a culture thing. I don't really know, but like I expect him, if the only thing you worry about Matsuyama ever is, oh, my neck hurts and I've got to withdraw, so I'm better for Augusta.
I've got two counterpoints to the Rory point. Number one, I do understand the thought that Rory cares about the Masters, not about this week. Two things to that. Number one, he's so damn talented that I'm not sure like if he doesn't care, that's necessarily a bad thing for his outlook this week, because he might just dominate the field based on talent alone, where he's not really caring about his results, and maybe that almost helps him, could help him make putts, for example. The second part of that, though, is kind of the opposite, which is I do think he cares about this week, not in the sense that he cares about being known as the winner of the Valero Texas Open, but because I think he believes that putting himself into contention right before Augusta will help him get it done at Augusta. So for that purpose, I think he wants to go out there super focused, get this thing done, and show himself like he's ready right now to get it done under the heat of the moment.
Yeah, and what's impressive about Rory too is he plays good in the wind, even though he hits moon balls. To be able to hit it as high and as hard as he hits it and still have such control of his golf ball is really impressive.
It almost doesn't make sense. I don't understand how he does it.
I mean, even like when I go out there and I try to I'll have like an into the wind tee shot or whatever, and drivers are made to not spin. So generally speaking, the higher you hit it, the less it's spinning, right? As long as it's hit solid. And I'll be like, I'm just going to hit this one up, and hit it low. Anyway,
when I used him at PGA National at the Cognizant, I was watching. He hit a shot on number 6, a really difficult par 4. It's like 170 out. He hit it to 2-3 feet, something like that, and his finish was below his waist. So you think about like where the club is when you follow through. Most of the time, it's coming all the way up. He finished below his waist. So like sometimes people criticize him, saying things like, oh, Rory only has one speed. All he knows how to do is hit it as hard as he possibly can and as high as possibly can. Even when his ball flight stays high, he's got a lot more shots than people give him credit for. And to your point, that's why he's better in the wind than we would expect for someone with such a high ball flight.
Yeah. And there's definitely I can see a scenario here where he goes and wins by 5, right? That's that's definitely not out of the question. And a matter of fact, I could see a very mediocre first round, an even par-ish first round where he presents a ton of value live betting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Final thing. What are you thinking for one and done? I've got a guy that I'm pretty much I shouldn't say he's pretty clearly my number 1. Who are you thinking this week?
In fairness, I don't have a list of who we've used and not used. Mm-hmm. So we probably need to get that back together because you have access to the login and I don't. But as far as a clear cut one and done, it's hard to not go back to a guy like Corey Connors for me, just because he's had so much success here and we know he can win here. And I think I would say I'm generally not a huge. I do believe in course history. I'm not huge into it though, and I think that he is just so comfortable here that I like his chances.
Are you afraid that because of his history, he'll be a popular one and done selection?
I don't. So normally I would say yes. I think that this crowd is a little bit different. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I could get behind Harmon as well. I know that you like him in the outright market. I could definitely I could see him winning here, very much so. That Harmon would probably be my one. I think Connors is just the one that to me that stands out that we're not going to regret not having anywhere else either.
Harmon's the guy for me who's kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. So it's probably going to be Brian Harmon, but obviously we have plenty of time to change that. And one of the things, as always, is going to be what's the DFS ownership look like? If Brian Harmon is going to be 30% at $8,600, okay, maybe he's going to be a little bit too popular for our taste in the one and done contest. So we will.
What do you think about like a Matsuyama here?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he has played so well. It's another golf course that fits his skill set of just being phenomenal around the greens. Another guy, by the way, I think we will learn a bunch from the DFS ownership where if Matsuyama is being completely overlooked as the second most expensive guy there, he then becomes potentially a low-owned play in one and done. If Matsuyama instead is going to be 20% as the second highest price player on DraftKings, now we know, okay, he's going to be a pretty popular selection in one and done, and maybe it's actually Harmon who's going to be the lower owned in that contest. So I think we will learn a lot, but I would be very comfortable calling Matsuyama my number 2 behind Harmon.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if he goes, I think once again, we go ownership, but I think if like Connors, if if he comes in projecting under, that 3-4%, that was more of, I just think he's going to get overlooked where he is. And I think he provides a ton of value. Very
possible there. All right. I think that'll do it. So Justin, why don't we brainstorm throughout the week, see if there's any fun thing we can do with one of those Masters ticket entries that I've got for next week. Till then, we'll catch you next time. Thanks everybody for tuning in.